Hello everybody. In this video I wanted to talk about how I implemented the pushing mechanic in my game. Uh, I have to say that this is a game made with my own game engine. So, but if you're familiar with Unity, the commercial engine, you will probably find a lot of similarities because that was my main reference when I started making the engine. So let's see what is the pushing mechanic right now. So as you can see, when I get close to this object is pushable in this case. I get this kind of VFX that I set in the hands of the player, the character, to just have some visual reference, like, hey, you can actually interact with this. Now you can interact, now you cannot, right? So when I press the interaction button, you see that the player gets kind of attached to the object. And from this point, you can actually move to the side, forward, back, and this object will also interact with the environment. If I hit a wall, the player stops interacting. This is something I set it in this way to stop interacting just because it makes easier to handle some collisions. So let's take a look. If I go back, then it stops when I touch this wall also. But this could also be changed depending on what you would like to do. It also interacts with the field of view of enemies, so this incorporates quite a nice mechanic in the game. It also can be used to block the path of enemies, or AI, sorry, patrolling on the map. So if there is a patrol, AI patrolling to this side, and I place the blockable, this pushable object here, it will block his way because it is also considered an navigation obstacle. It will just remove part of the navigation, not really a mesh. I will talk about a bit later about which kind of navigation I implemented in the engine, but it basically removed the possibility from the AI to go from this point to the other side. So let's take a look how this is done in the editor I made. Here we can see the editor. I ended up making an editor to make my life easier when I was creating the levels. But in the end, it became a quite big piece of software. As you can see here, there's a lot of possibilities, and this is really helping me a lot to develop the levels, to create levels and make level design, game mechanics in a much faster and easier way. But let's focus on the pushable object. This is the pushable object, so we can just move it around, and it has several components. So if you're familiar with Unity, you will find this very similar. On the left side, we have the entities view. Here is my prototype pushable object, however you want to call it. In this case, I call it in this way. And on the right side, I can see in spec what actually defines this object. And we can see that it has several different components. So it has a transform. The transform component is a mask component for all entities in the game and defines things like position, rotation, and scale. So the things that place the object in the scene. The mesh renderer, well, actually here you can see the different things. So we could also touch them like this, but have the option also done that you can also do it with the mouse, which makes it much more user-friendly to say it in a way. Then we have a mesh renderer. The mesh renderer just basically uh, just a mesh to paint now in the scene. That's basically what's a renderer doing, and it has a bunch of different options to make the rendering more efficient. So you can make it an instance rendering, but it's not the topic I would like to talk or discuss in this video now. And some other possibilities, like if this contributes to shadows or to the reflection in the water. So many possibilities are just set here. We have the box collider, which you can see in red, as this is the gizmos that I implemented. So I have an idea of if I'm creating or not the box collider in the right way. And you, of course, can change some things. You could change the local position, so to make it appear this place from what is the origin of this mesh. and then the size, which is the most important thing here. Then we have several things here, and the most relevant one, if it's triggered or not. This is not triggered because we want to make it interact with the other colliders in the scene. And finally, the navigation obstacle has nothing here. It's just a component that when you add it, then I know that this participates as an obstacle in the navigation, and it will start affecting the navigation points that are depending where it is. And this is dynamic always, so if it's moving, um, it will be compute. Uh, it will be calculated again. So let's go to the pushable, which is the most important one. This is what I want to. This is what defines that this object in the end is pushable. We can see that it has these two options here. This I made it myself here. This is to remove the component, but this is to show gizmos, and we get here some lines. Let's talk about all these things. So we have a pushable. It has several options to be defined. One is how do you want the player to push this pushable, and this is called the pushable strategy. And this pushable strategy, in this case, is called unrestricted push strategy. And this means that this can be pushed in all directions. And so far, I only have implemented one, but in the end, this allows me to implement any kind of pushing strategy. Because this, every time you implement something, the best way of thinking is in this generic way of, well, I want making something to push, how it's going to push, yeah, obviously it's going to push moving forward or backwards like this, but yeah, you never know. Just define something more generic. Just make an interface or make an abstract class and just say whatever pushing will have certain methods that you need to implement, but the way you implement them, just let it the user the one the coder, in this case the programmer, make it for itself. And here we have the mass. It's important because this defines also a bit how this pushable works in sense of physics, how it interact with the wall. We have a BFX here, which is just like, in this case, in my case, I have this BFX here, which is smoke that appears on the bottom when you're moving it. And finally, the push points. These are important because this is a cube, which is very simple shape, but it could be a weird shape, no, that can be pushed. So I made it in a way that I can define from where and how you can push. So I'm defining points here that you can see with these orange lines, and I'm also defining the direction in which the character will face when he's moving in within these lines, and that's very important. And I define all kind of possibilities here, which is just 4 lines, so 8 points. And that's it for the pushable. This is how it actually works. So when you saw that when I click and interact with it, it will just attach to it. And it will be able to move in these directions. And this moving actually depends on the camera. So let's dive just very quick on the code. I don't want to go very much in detail. Here we are. This is the Visual Studio project of the game and game engine and editor. I have everything together, which might not be the best thing to do, but I mainly, you can see here with the directive, I'm just defining which things belong to each define. Let's just quickly see the pushable. The pushable parts from a component. This is why I can add it to an entity. And this is mainly as the mono behavior for the Unity users. It's an interactable. This interactable, it's quite extendable the way I made it because you can make all kind of interactions and happen all kind of actions. So it's based on interaction actions and interaction results. So it's all abstracted in a way. Just to make it very simple, if we go here, you see that I have 3 kinds of interactions. When I get close to an interactable, when I get far from the interactable, and when I interact, actually. This is the one relevant now. When I got close to the object, you saw that my hands showed a BFX, right? This is why I'm defining here. I'm saying, hey, what kind of things will happen? And then I define here this interaction action, which is calling this method. This method will just show the player hands. And this is very abstract because you can create any kind of method. You can also see that everything is private. So there is no access from outside to these methods. So there is a class, there is something called interactor which will call these methods, but nothing else in the end can do it. And finally, the interaction, the moment you interact, what I'm doing is just bringing the player to the pushing state. There is a state machine which has sub-state machines, and all kind of different states happen there for the player. So the moment you interact with a pushable, what I'm doing is just basically saying, hey, go to this state. And yeah, I'm not gonna enter too much in detail how that works because it's a lot. But if you also are interested on the coding part, please let me know, because I can also make videos just about the code part, no? But if we go to the pushing state, you can see this is a simple state machine system. We have an entering method here. Well, many things will happen. I will maybe just talk briefly about it. We have a physics update. We can also have a normal update, but many of the other things happen in the physics update, and then we unsubscribe from everything in the exit, no? So when you enter, in briefly, we change the speed of the character. We get the character close to the pushable, and for that we follow this easy approach, which is we have 2 points. We find which are the points closer to the player. Then between these 2 points, we check, we clamp the position of the player. So we do the projection to the vector. And in this way, we can know what is the closest point within the line where it's going to start pushing, and we can bring the player to there. And that's what we do. We displace the player to that position. We make it face in the direction we were actually, that this comes from the pushable. You saw that I defined it in there. We set the animator to is pushing, and this is all, this is like the Unity. I made the animator very similar to how in Unity works. And so you set the bool parameter in this case, which I define, which is pushing, and then set it to true. And then this is all the actions that I'm allowing to do while you're pushing. This is nice because you can forbidden some things. You just implement the things that you can do depending on the state you are. This makes much cleaner the code, and says you don't need so many if statements. You just say, hey, I'm pushing, you only can move. Also, this is because the axis thing is because I allow Xbox controller for this. So you can only move, and when you press interact, what is going to happen actually is that you stop interacting. That's mainly the things you can do while you are in this state. And in the physics part, that's the last thing I want to talk about here. You saw that you can rotate the camera, so this became a bit more difficult. It's not about you move to the right, you move to the right, you move to the left, you move to the left. It's about, hey, where are you facing? I'm facing forward. Where do you want to move? Okay, then the pushing direction changes depending where you're facing and where you're moving. So it's not as straightforward. And this for everything. When you have rotations of camera, I had the same problem with many other things, like this going up and down. So if you look here, if I go back to the game, I can run it here again. I can just run the game here, game debug, as I call it here. And let me change here to the engine. So here, if we go back to here, I can just move around, and then this is what I meant. So if I go here, to go up, I have to press forward. If to go down, I have to press backward. But in this case, to go up, I have to press left, and I have to press right to go down. Oh, but if I rotate here, now not anymore. Now I have to press forward and backward. That's what I mean. And for the pushing, it's similar thing. So that's one of the things you have to take into account when you're designing these kind of things. You also can move and interact with the field of view, which is quite nice. I think I already said it. And that was it for this video. So if you like this kind of videos, you think you want to know more about other mechanics, and you please let me know in comments, and also let me know if you prefer more code, less code, more gameplay. Just I'm open to any kind of video. I just want to share with all of you what I'm doing, and I'll be happy to know to get feedback from you.